Talking about children. So the other day we were talking about emotional and social development with children. Now let's talk about language development. How do we learn our language? Your brain is wired to learn language. Now it's not wired to learn Spanish, English, French, but it's wired to learn language in general. So whatever culture you're experiencing, then that culture will teach you your language. Right? Language development is based on a maturation process. Remember maturation? We talked about in terms of language, the child has to be physically ready to learn language. They have to have clear ear canals, if that makes any sense to you. Children who have a lot of ear infections when they're young, have a tendency to be language delayed. Right? They just don't pick it up as quickly because they're not hearing anything. So you have to be able to hear for the language. You have to be able to control your little mouth, right, and your tongue. That's there, which sounds weird for you and I, but children just don't get that. They have to develop that ability to do that. They have to be socially mature to sit and really listen to what's going on, emotionally mature to be able to start saying words and not get so frustrated. So it's basically a maturation process the child learns. And as the child develops their brain, as their brain develops, their language is going to develop. And that's a loop that's there. The more the language develops, the more the brain develops. You catch that? One helps each other. How do we learn language? Most of us have learned our language from our mothers. Most women are the primary caregivers in most cultures. They take care of the children. And they're also the one that works more with the child in teaching language. And that's why we call it motherese. If you want to be politically correct, we'll call it parentese, all right? Because dads do obviously have an impact on it and do assist with that. But in most cultures, dads are more for playing than they are for primary caregiving. Okay? And they're kind of like the child's playmate for a while. I mean, mom comes home, mom greets the child, is with the child, talks to the child, feeds the child, and dad says, come here, let's play. Okay? And tosses the child around and tickles him and everything else. He's more a plaything in most cultures. However, I do have to say, in the last 10 to 15 years, men are much, much more involved in primary caregiving. Feeding the child, picking the child up. This is the real key that's there. If both parents are working, who stays home when the child is sick? Most of the times it's mom that does that. That's still a cultural aspect that's there. But how do we learn language? Most children learn it through their mother, and it's called motherese. What do mothers do or parents do? Well, the first thing you do, and again, this sounds ridiculous, but if you're going to be a parent, someday you were a parent with your children, this is what you did. And you didn't even realize how ridiculous it sounds. But when I say it, it does. First, a child is going to make a noise. And most noises little infants make are cooing sounds. They're like little pigeons. They go, ooh, 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 ooh. And the parent will do it back. Ooh, ooh, to you too. What are you trying to tell me? Oh, hello, do you need your diaper changed? Ooh, ooh. And we laugh about that, but that's really important. Because what the child is that's all they can do. And then they hear a sound like their sound. And what you're doing is called a scaffolding or a stair-step approach. Match them and then add something. Match them and then add something so that slowly the brain is here and then you're matching the brain and then you're inducing them to add another sound. So the next thing that children then do is they'll begin to babble. And they'll even point sometimes. And the parent will go back, blah, 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 to you too. What are you trying to tell me? Eat? Is that what you want to do? Blah, 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 blah. Eat. The child says. Well, now what they do, they begin to babble, and then the next thing you're trying to get them to do is monosyllables, which would be eat, mum, Dada, two syllables. Dada, okay, mama, that's there. Out, go, and then their favorite word, which is no, right? Why is that their favorite word? Because they hear that all the time from us. No, no, so they hear it, and they say that a lot. No, no. And sometimes it's not like they're defying you, but that's one of the only words they know, and they say no all the time. Or some children will do this. Why? Why? They're always asking why? Why? And they may not even, you and I go, well, let me tell you the reason why. They can't even comprehend why. They just throw that word out to get a reaction from you. Why? I got her again, didn't I? Okay, so monosyllables. Then you go to polysyllables, which would be the child may say, go out now, go out. Okay, and then you reply back, oh, so you want to go outside. Johnny wants to go outside. So what you're doing, you're matching them and then taking them to the next level. That's there. So now what you're doing after polysyllables, now you're trying to teach syntax and grammar. That's there. Trying to pull full sentences together. Right? So you start doing the full sentences, and then you practice that on and on. By the time a child is 3 years old, they will have as many as 2,000 or 3,000 words by the time they're 3 years old. That's a lot of words to pick up on. Now, some of those words, in the way they're pronounced, only a mother or the parent will know, will figure out. Because I've been around little kids too, and sometimes you go, what do they say? Okay, and the mother will interpret, because they're what pronunciations aren't right. Okay? But they're beginning to learn them. Language development. It's called motherese or parentese. Now, some parents say, no, I'm not going to do baby talk, because a lot of people call this baby talk. I'm talking in full sentences. So the child says, oh, out. And you say, so what you're trying to tell me is that you would like to venture outside right now. So why don't you tell me that? Dad, I would like to venture outside right now. Okay, and the child goes, out. Now, the research on those children is that their language delayed. They don't pick up on the language as quickly as when you match them with parentese. However, when they get to be 3 and a half, they are really far ahead of the other children because they've had all those years of listening to grammatically correct sentences. That's there. Either one gets you to the same place, okay? And it both works. Those of you who have English as a second language, okay, how many speak another language? Wow, quite a few of you. That's great. What are you going to do with your children? Are you going to teach your native language or English first? You can do both at the same time? Both at the same time? Let me tell you what the research says on that. If you do both at the same time, your child will be language delayed. However, they'll be a little slow, okay, picking up the language. However, what you're doing is wiring their brain to learn both languages on a native basis. So when they speak, they just can speak both of them, okay? It's not like when you all learned whatever your second language is, and at first you had to what? Translate. You're constantly translating. What's that word in English? What's that word in Spanish? What's that word in... Well, with these children, they don't even do it. They just get into one language. It's as if one part of their brain is wired for English, and they hit it. Then another part is wired for Spanish, boom, and they hit it, and they just flows very, very clearly. But at first, it's a little confusing. What's the word for pencil? What's the word for this? And sometimes they do a little bit of both in their sentences that are there. And then you also know the grammar in different languages is very different as well. So sometimes they get a little mixed up with that. But eventually, they become native speakers. The younger you can introduce a language to the child, the better off they are. Here's another interesting study. People who learned 2 languages in their childhood, they actually have, better brain development. Okay, their brains are wired in a more efficient way in the language centers that are there. When you get to your 70s and 80s, you have less of a chance to have some type of dementia in your 70s and 80s. Fascinating correlational study. What does that do with language? Somehow the learning of 2 and 3 different languages really increases your brain to be much more efficient. The other subject is also that's important, you sax players, okay, is music. We find that people who learn music at very young ages, that also kind of expands the brain. Okay, and it helps you, by the way, in the study of math, and it also helps you in the study of any other sciences that are there as well. So we find that the music, second languages, does help with brain development. That's not in your textbook. I just threw that out there. All right? New research. All right, let's talk about cognitive development now. So how do our brains are going to develop physically, but what about our ability to think? And our ability to think is then called cognitive development. This fellow's name down here, Piaget, is the one who first developed stages of cognitive development. He was one of the first people to write about this. This is the first time I'm going to say this, but I'll imply it a couple of more times. A lot of the people who will study, okay, wrote about this stuff. I mean, Piaget wrote about this in the 1960s. I mean, good gosh, that's over 50 years ago, right? Well, you know, we found out a lot more, and we find out that what Piaget wrote about is pretty accurate, but it's been changed a little bit over the years. So historically, I'll always give you the first person who started writing about this, and then I'll begin to tell you what we've learned, and he wasn't 100% correct. Right? So Piaget is the one who talked about two processes that we have to develop in cognitive development. One is called assimilation, application of existing mental schemes to new situations. What happens in your brain, you develop cognitive schemas of thinking about things. Sometimes people say, oh, I don't have a brain for math. Oh, I don't have a mind for writing, or things like that. Well, what we're really talking about is your schema, the way you process information that's there. Assimilation means anytime you form a schema and then you're confronted with a new situation, you take that new situation and you assimilate it into the new schema, which isn't good a lot of times, all right? Which is not good. You really want to accommodate, which means constantly forming new schemas. But let me give an example of assimilation. A little child, once again, just learning to talk. And you're driving along in some farm-to-market road, and the child looks at this animal out there and says, "What that? What that? What that?" And of course, hopefully you'll say, what is that? Okay? What is that? Okay? You want to know what that is? Okay? That's a cow. Look at that. It's a cow. So the child looks out and sees this big animal, right, with a big round head. Okay, it has a hide to it, has 4 legs, has a tail, and its belly is real close to the grass, and it eats grass. Okay, right? So the child is forming a schema. This is what a cow looks like. Cow, cow, cow. So now you're driving about 5 more miles along the way, and the child looks out, looks at this animal that has a hide, has 4 legs, a tail, a head, but the belly isn't as close to the ground, okay, and is much taller than the cow and is eating grass. So you see the child looking perplexed and says, "Big cow, big cow." And you look and you go, no, honey, that's a horse. That's a horse. Horses are bigger, okay, they're thinner, they have long, kind of flat heads. Horse, that's a horse. No, big cow. If he keeps saying big cow, then he's assimilating, right? Application of existing, what a cow looks like, to new situations. If he says, oh, okay, horse, horse, you say, good. He is now accommodating. Modification of existing mental patterns to fit new demands. Why is this important? If you don't accommodate, you're going to get stuck in life. We've always got to what? Adapt and change. The history of human beings and how we got to be where we are is that we've adapted to our environments. Okay? We've changed the way we think. We've evolved. And you have to be able to do this. The basis of bias is based on assimilation. I'm not going to see anybody else, okay? I won't view anybody else except the way I learned to view those people, okay? And then people get stuck that way. Look at all the technological advancements. A lot of times I walk down the hallway, and a lot of you who are early are sitting there, and you're all doing this. Yeah, you look like little monkeys, okay, and doing all this stuff. What was life like without cell phones? Well, a lot of you don't know that. You've always had a cell phone, okay? But how different our lives were. But there are some people who just don't get technology. Some of your grandparents like, I might break a phone if I touch it. Text somebody, oh, will I break something? I'm not sure. They just haven't accommodated, okay? In order for us to progress during our lives, we have to be able to accommodate. The world changes, doesn't it? People change, the world changes. You're going to change. And if you keep having your views that you developed at 15, when you get to be 25, 35, 45, 55, you're going to get stuck in life. So we need to be able to change the way we think and accommodate. Piaget's stages of cognitive development. What he talked about is that a child, from the time he is born, the time he becomes an adolescent, he will go through distinctive changes in the way he thinks. And effective parents, if we're going to go back to that, understand that their children don't think like adults. Therefore, you cannot lecture a child like you would talk to another adult, because their brains don't process the same way an adult does. You get that? That's why some kindergarten teachers and preschool teachers are very unique and very different. But then again, when you talk to them sometimes it's kind of like, I'm not a preschool child. Don't talk to me that way. Don't say, Steve, I want you to go inside right now, because that's where they talk to little children, right? Because they try to match that child. First stage of development is called sensory motor. Piaget used to say that occurred from the time you were born to about 2 years old. Don't write that down. Because what we really know is that that's probably not true. That with our advances in technology and brain stimulation, we find some children getting out of sensory motor earlier than 2. 18 months, 16 months, 14 months. But what I want you to know is that infancy is usually about sensory motor cognitive processing. Does an infant at 3 and 4 years old lay there and think the way we think? No, they don't. They don't have those cognitive abilities. They don't have them. Their brains are based on sensory and motor responses. What do they see? What do they hear? What do they smell? What do they taste? And then that will help them react. Their memories are not cognitive memories like what we have. All right, who's got a memory from when you were 3 months old? Right? How about 6 months old? How about a year old? How about a year and a half? Have we got a year and a half? That might be possible, a year and a half, 2 years. A lot of your memories, your early memories, though, for some of you, are really not memories. You watched a video of you when you were a year and a half, okay, and that became your memory. And you went, oh, I remember that. No, you didn't. You remembered you doing something through a video. Most of us can't come up with things before 3 years old. And by the way, the older you get, okay, the harder it is to remember the things that happened in younger years that are there. But sensory motor is just that. Everything is based on sensing and then your reactions to it. Does a child remember their mother? Yes, they do. Do they say, oh, there's my mother coming in? I cognitively remember her. No, they don't. They remember mom by the sense of smell and hearing. Smell and hearing. Matter of fact, most babies, they don't have a well-developed sight until about 2.5 to 3 months old. Okay? They don't even see you. It's kind of a blur that's there. But boy, can they smell you. You can take 10 babies, okay, and this is not gross, but this is how they do this. They take a armpit sampling of a mother, or body odor like this, and take that and wave it in front of 10 babies, and only one baby will start doing this and moving around because it's kind of like, oh, that's my mom, okay? It's just wired that way. Sound of the mother or the father, the caregiver, and the smell that's there, and then they can see the mother. There's no really definitive memories that are there. There are sensory motor memories, not what we call cognitive memories. At the very last stages of sensory motor, a child begins to develop something called object permanence. And in object permanence, they're beginning to keep an object, right, something in their environment, permanently in their mind. Otherwise, before this time, things just kind of come and go. They don't have those memories of things. Now, there's a game that little babies love to play, and it's called peekaboo. Okay? They love this before object permanence. Okay? You can go, you're my baby. Okay, so I can go, hello, baby, and you're kind of smiling. And then I take a little blanket or just my hands and go, ah. And the baby goes, oh, where did they go? They're gone. Where are they? Then I go like this, and they go, oh, look at that, you're back. Oh, this is so funny. And they just think, they don't have the cognitive abilities to say, oh, it's just a blanket in front of their face. When you're gone, you're gone. It's called out of sight, out of mind. Okay? If you're out of their sight, out of their sensory range, you're not in their mind. However, when object permanence begins to develop, you can do a blanket in front of your face, then do this, and then baby will go, what do you think, I'm an idiot? Yeah, you got a blanket in front of your face, and it's not funny anymore. And you go, well, they used to laugh so much. Not anymore. But now, and they're usually pretty mobile by now as well, but now they might like to play a game called hide and seek. Okay? Why? Because I know you exist and I can go find you somewhere. And they're just developing the skill, so it's kind of fun. I got this ability. I know where you are. Don't play hide and seek with a child who hasn't developed object permanence. You'll go hide and they'll go, I don't know. And they'll go do something else. And you'll be hiding for an hour. They won't even play the game. Now, what happens in the beginning when they start to play this game, they usually hide in the same place you just hid. Okay? Or they'll hide in the same place every time. But then as their little brains begin to develop, and they develop a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more, what happens is they start thinking, this is a body. Where can I fit this body? Under a bed, in a closet, in a washing machine, okay? And, I mean, they're really, thinking at higher levels that are there. So you begin to see that progression in the child's thinking. The second stage is called pre-operational. This is where they learn language. And language is a powerful, powerful tool to a child. If you also think about motor development, the way a child develops their motor skills is usually they're just like a lump, sorry, they're just going to lay there, okay? And then they develop their neck, and they can pick their neck up and hold their neck, and you no longer have to do this. They do that, then they can kind of squirm up a little bit on their shoulders and put their arms like this. They look like little worms, okay? And they can start doing this. Then they learn to flip around. And sometimes when they learn to flip, they flip and they think it's, wow, this is cool. Okay? And then they get up a little bit, and then they can start creeping along. They can crawl along. Then they can start creeping along, right? And eventually they start holding themselves up, and then they can start walking. Each stage of that physical development also changes the brain, right? Each stage of language development changes the brain. Since pre-operational is all about language development. And language development and the ability to move around is very, very powerful for a child. No, mommy, get that. Because now they can tell you what to do. Did you ever hear of a term called the terrible twos? One of the reasons parents think terrible twos, by the way, terrible twos can happen at 18 months, 2.5, or may never happen. But for most children, man, they can get around, they can get to things, they can use their language to tell you what to do and to ask for things. It's a very powerful stage. Hold that thought, because in this development we use language. Language is symbolic. I have a word for something that's there, but they remain very intuitive. This part of their brain is not very well developed, but their emotional sides are beginning to develop more and more. What you feel, they feel. Did you hear what I said? Little kids are really intuitive. Mommy's sad? Mommy's sad. No, Mommy's not sad. Mommy's sad. Okay, and you go, no, I'm really not sad. But you are sad. You're basically lying to him. Okay, but he knows you're sad, because they're very, very intuitive. They feel what you feel. You're happy, they're happy. You're sad, they're sad. Right? Very, very intuitive. Their thinking is egocentric. Everything is about them. That's also the terrible twos. Okay? I exist in this world. You exist in this world for me. Okay? Everything revolves around me. It's just the way they think. If they're standing in front of your television set and you can't see, and you say to them, oh, Johnny, could you move a little bit? I can't see. It's not unusual for a child to say, yes, you can. And you go, you obnoxious little kid. Yeah, I can't. Why are you so selfish? And they go like, okay? They really think if they can see it, you can see it. What happened at preschool today? You know. No, I don't know what happened. You know. They really believe that whatever happened to them, you know about. Because the world revolves around them. They're very egocentric in their thinking. Egocentric in their thinking. They also have what's called magical thinking. The world revolves around not logic and rationality, but magic. It's called animistic thinking. Okay? It's a big word. Animistic thinking. That is really our first organized religions were based on animistic thinking. The world is a magical place. The crops don't grow because the sun god is upset or the rain clouds are upset and we need to sacrifice to help out the gods. The world is a magical place. So are children's thinking. This is exemplified in their nightmares when they have a dream. The nightmares a child has is based on magical thinking. It's stuff in the night that's going to get them. Somebody lives under their bed that's going to go up and eat them. There are monsters that are going to eat them. Okay? Tigers crawl in at night and were trying to eat me. The monsters were trying to eat me again. I looked out the window and the tree turned into a monster and he was trying to grab me and eat me again. Everything's being eaten all the time. It's magical thinking. So if your child, okay, oh, daddy, 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 true story, by the way, daddy, 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 3 o'clock in the morning, what, okay, there was a big tiger in my room and the tiger was going to eat me, he was going to eat me, daddy. There's no such thing as tigers in the room. You were having a nightmare. It was real, it was real. You know what? Magical thinking, it was real. I can sit here and say, no, there's no such thing. That's just a nightmare. Tigers don't wander around in your room. No such thing as monsters. Yes, there is. When they say yes, there is, they believe that. There really is. A better answer could be match their magical thinking. This is what I did with my son. I said, well, you know what? When you are sleeping and those things happen, it's like you're watching this giant television screen. And you know how to use a remote, so if something is upsetting you, grab the remote in your brain and switch the channels to something you really like. Really, Daddy? Yeah, you can do that. In fact, let's try to do that right now. Switch the channel, think about something, switch the channel, switch the channel. Oh, okay, Daddy. Next night. Ah, Daddy, Daddy. What's the matter? The remote didn't work. So the next thing I did was, when he was younger, Sesame Street was a big thing for him. So what I did is I took all his little animals, Big Bird, Bert and Ernie, and the Count and all this stuff, and I put it around his bed, because the tiger, I believe, was living underneath his bed and coming out. And I said, Big Bird and Bert and Ernie will protect you, it won't happen. Next night, Sleep. Guy got up next morning. I said, well, did the tiger come? Yeah, Daddy, the tiger came out. But Bert jumped on him and hit him, and Ernie wrestled him, and then Big Bird came along and chased him away. I said, oh, that's cool. Yeah, it worked. Now I say that, I can say I'm proud of myself for doing that, but good gosh, you can try 20 of these different things before one works. A child's nightmares are based on their stages of development. When they get to the concrete stage, which is very logical and rational, it's no longer about monsters going to get them. It's something very real. Like I just saw on the news, a child was abducted. Is that going to happen to me? And they have nightmares about that. Bobby in school, their parents were getting divorced. He's really upset. Are you going to get a divorce? I had a nightmare about that. It's very real stuff at the next stage.
I think you kind of answered my question, but this is coming from my experience. Do they ever, when talking about anxieties, about sleeping at night, I'm going through that with my actually nearly 9-year-old.
Okay.
So we've been working a lot with her, so I know you can't predict anything.
Right.
Is that something that's deeply seated in the brain, or is that something they go through?
Most of the time, majority of the time, it's something a child just grows through. As parents, we get real worried. We think, good gosh, it's a trauma, and they'll never get over it. If there was a trauma and something really did happen to them, then it is wired in the brain. That's this. If that happened, there's a different answer for that.
Well, it's not a trauma. It's more like a magical thinking.
Okay. Well, it's not going away. Yeah. Well, at 9 years old, they're probably in the concrete stage, and what's wound up happening, they made the magical thinking more concrete. And you really can't treat it in a magical way. It has to be more concrete. But it's so wired in their brain, it's hard to get away from that. You could try the magical type of thinking and come up with something with the concrete. Let's just have fun about this time. This time what I want you to do is I want you to think about, a remote control. You come up with whatever is important to the child, and let's try to do that together. Now, the key to a lot of this is practicing it. Remember I said before, I want to practice this with you? Let's do it together. Mommy's going to visualize. Now, I want you to visualize. Let's do this together. And first you have to be able to, the word is anchor him or her. Anchor him or her in what you want them to, the more positive one. Let's do it over and over and over, over and over and over, over and over. Then you want to slowly introduce the negative one. Don't do it all at once, though, because they need to systematically handle the first little stage of it. All right, now I'm doing my example. Now let's say that the tiger makes a little noise. He's only makes a little bit of noise. He makes the noise now right away. Bert comes out and says, don't you make that noise. Don't you make that noise. And then you gradually build it up to the whole thing. Because if you try to do the whole thing the first time, it's too overwhelming for them. Okay? And there's a name for this in psychology, and that's called systematic desensitization. You want to do it one small step at a time. Okay? That's a good question. Magical thinking. Are you ready? I'm ready to ruin this for some of you who still operate on the pre-operational level. Santa Claus? Magical thinking, people. All right? Well, think about this. When did you believe in Santa Claus? 3 years old, 4 years old, 5 years old. Right? No, none of you ever believed in Santa Claus. I was the only one. I saw Santa Claus, by the way, going through the sky when I was a little kid. I was hallucinating, okay? But man, I really believe that. Children really believe this. Somebody comes, gives them presents. It's the Easter Bunny. It's this, it's that. It's magical thinking that's there. My children, I told you, were into Sesame Street. My mom lives in New York City. At the time she was. And so they said, oh, good. Are we going to get to go to Sesame Street? I said, well, what do you think? Sesame Street, that's in New York City. Sesame Street. It says it in the end. It says Sesame Street Productions, New York City. Okay, it's in New York City. Let's go to Sesame Street. I said, well, there's no such thing as Sesame Street. Yes, there is. My little daughter was 2.5, was going, yes, there is. I said, well, Daddy goes to school. Daddy's a teacher. We're on spring break. That's why we're going up there. Sesame Street is on spring break. They're not there then. Oh, okay. We lie a lot, right? But it works. Again, I'll tell you another story about my daughter. Concrete operational. She hit that really early. She's a very logical, rational person. At a very early age, she came to me, was barely really communicating that well, maybe 3.5, and said to me, "Daddy," I said, "What?" She said, "Tell me the truth." I said, "All right." She said, "Santa Claus." I said, "What about Santa Claus? Is there really a Santa Claus?" You know, one part of me is a parent, but the other part is a psychologist. So I said, "Well, why do you ask?" "Because." I said, "Well, because why?" Okay. "I've been thinking." All right. What are you thinking about? "How does Santa Claus get to all the children in the whole world in one night?" I said, "Well, you know, there are different time zones when you travel, and he's got this really fast sled." She was looking at me like, "There's not a fast sled. Sleds don't fly." I said, "Well, maybe he takes an airplane. He's more up to date." He said, "Daddy." And she said, "How does he get all the toys in every room?" I said, "Well, you've read the book. It goes down the chimney. Not everybody has chimneys." I said, "Well, you know, he wiggles his nose and he pops in and gives presents." "Daddy." And I was like, "Oh, okay." I said, "What else do you got?" And she said, "How does he give you the present you really want?" I said, "Well, you send him an email like we did. You know, you send him an email, he gets the email, and he has a list." "Daddy, is there really a Santa Claus?" I said, "Well, what do you think?" She said, based on my deductions, no. She said, "No, I don't think so." I said, "You're right. Okay, there really isn't." I said, "But a lot of children like to believe this." Now, this also talks about sibling rivalry, because she had an older brother that's 2 years older, and she said, "Well, does Mark know that?" And I said, "Well, he's never asked us." And she said, "Ha! I know something he doesn't." She went very quickly to him and said, "You know there's no Santa Claus, Daddy told me." Okay? And he went, "Well, I know that, but don't tell them, because if they know that we know, then we won't get presents anymore." There was still that real basic thinking that's there, based on facts, concrete operational. But do you see that? You're beginning to figure stuff out based on facts. But back then, it's magical that's there. Okay? Everything is magical. At this level, at 3 and 4 years old, they can watch the same movie over and over and over again, don't they? And if you're a parent, it's like, do we have to watch this again? Okay? It's new to them. Every time they watch it, it's new to them. They probably have memorized every line that's there, but it's kind of new to them as they watch it. Very magical stuff. At a concrete level, okay, now you're getting into school years, 1st, 2nd, 3rd grade. Concrete level, they grow out of the magical thinking, but their thinking is very simplified. It's very concrete. Basic logic and rationality. This is the way the world works, and that's the only way the world works. If you played Monopoly with a child who's at pre-operational, you don't, right? They can't follow rules. They're not very concrete. They make up their own rules, okay? And you've got to follow it, okay? On a concrete level, they can figure out how Monopoly is played, but they don't get the trading and the bartering and things like that. Yeah, this is how you do it. It's very concrete and logical. It's called conservation of thinking. What this means is you're no longer using magical thinking. And what you can do is keep a concept in your brain and figure things out. And things in the world occur because of logic and rationality. You have answers to things, okay? And it's no longer magical. Very simple demonstration would be if you took 2 8-ounce glasses of water, and the water has to be in exactly the same type of glass that's there, right? And you say to the child, "Tell me, does one of these glasses of water have more water, less water, or are they the same?" A child at any level is going to look at it and go, "Oh, they're the same." Okay. Then you take one of those, you've got two of them right there, you take one right in front of them, one glass of water, and now what you're going to have is another glass that's very wide at the bottom and much shorter. You pour the 8 ounces into that glass that's shorter but wider. Then you ask the child, now which glass of water, the one that has the 8 ounces in it that you didn't pour out, or the smaller one that's wide, which one of these, okay, or you ask them, one of these glasses have more water, less water, or the same. A child on a pre-operational level is going to look at the taller glass of water and say, that one has more. The one at the concrete level is going to look at you, okay, and say, well, they have the same. It's the same amount of water. All you did was take that glass, okay, pour it into this one. It doesn't change, okay, because why? It's very concrete. It's logical and rational. But the child with magical thinking, they look at it and say, well, this one's bigger, so it's magical. It got smaller when it went to that one. Got it? Now, if you're dealing with a lot of children and you're giving each child 3 ounces of juice, but you have 8 different types of size glasses, you may have a lot of arguments. Why? He's got more than me. No, I gave everybody the same amount. That's, because it looks different. That's there. Take some clay, a lump of clay, make a big long snake out of it. Okay, again, the snake is more than the lump that's there. Or how about this one? Okay, you have 3 cookies, and you're messing with your younger brother who's still at the pre-operational level. You take 2 cookies to yourself, you give 1 to your younger brother. And he goes, not fair. You have 1 too, I only have 1. And you go, take his cookie, split it in half, separate it out, and then you say, 1, 2 for you, 1, 2 for me. And he'll say, oh, okay. Why? Because he's still in the pre-operational stage. It's not very concrete that's there. At this level, we also have what's called reversibility of thinking. Pre-operational level, you ask a child, do you have a sister? Yes, that's my baby sister. Does your sister have a brother? I don't know, because they can't change that around. But now you're in 1st grade, and if you're still at the pre-operational level, and teacher says to you, all right, let's do some addition. Let's do 3 plus 2. 5. Very good. 2 plus 3. And the whole class goes, 5. And you go, 5. Because you're just not getting that. So if you can't do that in addition, what's the opposite of addition? Subtraction. What's the opposite of multiplication? Is division. You're constantly going to be behind if you haven't hit this level. By the way, school districts develop their curriculum programs based on stages of cognitive development. What they say is, by this age, children are thinking this way, therefore we can present this material. So if you were a child who was a little delayed with your cognitive development, school was very frustrating to you. If you were a child who was more enhanced, okay, or ahead of the curve that was there, you might have been really bored in school, because you were thinking at higher levels than anybody else. Formal operational occurs around puberty. Okay, usually occurs at the beginning of puberty. It's adolescent thinking. It's formal operational thinking. It's when you're thinking like an adult. Did you hear what I just said? You may be 14 years old, but you have the cognitive abilities to think like an adult. So the old statements of do it because I said so doesn't work anymore. At a concrete level, it's like, because they can't come up with an answer. But at 14, 13, 12, 10, 11, because sometimes you can heat that at early ages, then they'll say no. Let me tell you why that's wrong, mother. And they can argue with you and argue with you. And adolescents love to argue because they're trying out their new mental abilities. Abstract thinking, logical, theoretical, hypothetical thinking. Okay? Figure things out that are not real, hypothetical thinking. You're in 5th grade, and you just finished a unit on ancient Egypt. okay, probably third grade, on ancient Egypt. And the teacher says, okay, class, I want you to go do a essay tonight, a 2-paragraph essay, minimum of 3 to 5 sentences per paragraph, on what would it be like if you were a child growing up in ancient Egypt. Moving out of concrete, moving into formal operational, you'd go ahead and do that. Imagining what was like, hypothetical thinking, right? Taking an unreal situation, using a hypothesis to figure it out. If you were still at the concrete level, you may raise your hand and say, teacher, we can't do that. That's so silly. Why can't we do that? Because we're not children who grew up in Egypt. And the rest of the class is going, ooh, a little behind, aren't you? Okay? It's hypothetical thinking. I sure hope every one of you are at formal operational levels. All right? That's higher levels of thinking. That's there. If I gave you an essay on a test and I said, list Piaget's stages of cognitive development, that's an easy one. That's a concrete question. But if I said to you, list and describe and give me an example of each one of these stages, it's a little higher up level, that's there. Later on today, I'll be talking about Lawrence Kohlberg and stages of moral development. If I said to you, compare and contrast Kohlberg stages of moral development to Piaget stages of cognitive development, that's a formal operational question. Higher level of thinking. Yes?
So the 4 stages that we went through, what about things like autism and Asperger's?
Sure. Those are different.
Right, but then when they go into therapy, is the brain pliable enough to be trained to go from one stage to another?
Matter of fact, a lot of those children are in formal operational stages. They just can't express it. Because Asperger's, autism is really more language-based and emotional and social development. That's what it lacks. Oh, they just can't. They can't express it. Good question. Question for you all for 1 point. During the formal operational stage, children begin to what? Develop formal, proper manners. Think primarily about concrete objects or situations. Develop the concept of object permanency. Think in terms of abstract principles and hypothetical possibilities. Or perform surgery on dolls and household pets. Operations, right? We're talking about operations here. So if you were a pre-operational child, you'd probably say, oh, 5. I like that one. We're doing operations on people. I saw that on television. Hopefully none of you are going to choose that answer. Right. What is it? Is it number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, or number 5? Looks like most of you got that one pretty quickly. All right, everybody got that? All votes in? 1, 2, 3. All right, so 93% of you correct. Right. Think in terms of abstract principles and hypothetical possibilities. The wording I just used. Still with me? Vygotsky, also under cognitive development. Piaget basically said that you cannot facilitate the brain. You can't push a child from sensory motor into pre-operational. You just have to wait for the brain to develop. A man by the name of Vygotsky took Piaget's work and he said, that's pretty good stuff, but you know what? I think the environment has a lot to do with cognitive development. It's called sensory stimulation. It's called cognitive stimulation. And what Vygotsky said is that, yes, you can facilitate a child's cognitive development. Zone of proximal development means the range of tasks a child can master without assistance. Basically, children can do this. There's a zone that's there. This is all they can do. Do you ever buy toys for children, and sometimes it says, for children, 3 to 6 years old, or 7 to 9 years old? Well, what they're doing, that's a zone of proximal development. Okay? They're going to have good experiences with this toy. It's not too young for them. It's not too old for them. So Vygotsky said you have to figure out where a child's zone of proximal development is. Give them a toy, an object, a teaching lesson. Okay? Match it to their zone. And then what you want to do is facilitate that through a process called scaffolding. Support the level of development. You know what a scaffold is? If I want to go paint up there, I build a scaffold and I go up. So when I'm working with a child, I figure out where their zone is. I then understand they're at the bottom of the zone in order for me to help them to learn, to facilitate their cognitive development. Instead of just waiting for it to occur, I can do different exercises, provide an enriching environment to get that child to experience and move ahead. That's the basis of all this children education that people have. Anybody know about Montessori schools? Montessori schools are based on exploration of play. Let's set up a situation for all the children to experience in their zones of development, and then allow them on their own, with some help, to go build them up. If I wanted to teach a child to learn to do a puzzle, what I would do is first start with the puzzle with the little handles on it, and let them do that. And then once they get manual dexterity, then I'll put a puzzle out, and they'll kind of move things around. But I know they can do this. It's only a puzzle of like 10 pieces. Then what I'll do is I'll take the puzzle and I'll show them. See this color over here? Let's find a color on the edge of this where this might fit. Do you see how this is square and these lines match up? Let's see, does it fit here? Oh, look, it fits right there. Color and color fits right there. Let me do another one with you. Another one. Now you do one. Okay. And you take their hand, they go, yeah, that's it right there. And what you're doing, you're slowly letting them scaffold build up until they can get to a puzzle with 50 pieces. And what Vygotsky says is, if you do this, then you are enriching the child's ability to go to those next stages. Good schools do that. That's what they do. They provide an environment so that all children can learn at whatever level they're at. And by the way, they are revolutionary school districts now and utilizing these types of approaches and computers and everything else to find out where a child is at and then build them up from there. All right, we're growing up, and we're growing up very quickly. We're getting out of childhood, and now we're going into adolescence. All right, come on, you remember adolescence. It wasn't too far away. For some of you, you're still in adolescence, right? You're 16, 17 years old. Adolescence, the onset of adolescence is puberty. Remember, guys, when your voices used to crack in the middle of 6th grade and 7th grade, and you didn't want to say anything because your voice would crack like that? Everybody would laugh at you. Puberty. What? Puberty, the onset of puberty, changing hormones, and it changes you physically. We know all about that, right? I don't have to go into that. Puberty changes you physically. But what people don't realize, it changes your brain as well. And it changes you emotionally and socially. Huge changes going on during puberty. The most changes you will have cognitive, physically, socially, and emotionally is 0 to 1 years old. Those of you who are parents, think about that. Brand new baby, about this big, year old, they're huge. How big they have grown. And the second greatest changes is puberty. All right? You will change cognitively, cognitive development. Those hormones also help you to focus a little bit better. Your sleep cycles get all messed up, by the way, because of changing hormones, and we'll talk about that in terms of sleep cycles in adolescence. But you also change emotionally. Okay, that's a biggie that's there. That nice, placid, laid-back little 10-year-old boy is now 12, and you say to him, you need to go clean your room. And he used to go, okay, Dad, go clean his room. Now he says, what for? And you go, oh, I just want you to clean your room. You're always telling me what to do, all the time. I'm sick of telling you what to do. And you're like, whoa, what happened? It's called hormones. Okay? It's called testosterone. Okay? It's called emotional changes that go on. That placid, cute little girl who would just go to school, now it's kind of like, I'm not going to school. Why aren't you going to school? I got to sit. I got a big sit right there. Everybody's going to make fun of me. I'm not going to school. No way. Look at my hair. It's a mess. the hell? It's just your hair. It's emotions, right? It changes you cognitively, emotionally, physically. I told you this once before, an adolescent's brain is not fully cognitively developed in terms of frontal lobes. Emotional, it sure is, and that's why a lot of decision making for adolescents is based on your emotions, not on logic and rationality. You do have formal operational, but it's just not that well developed just yet. Puberty changes everything. Search for identity. Who am I? What am I all about? You have an adult brain and an adult body. Now you're trying to figure that out. Now, I seriously doubt any of you, except maybe I shouldn't say that. Some of you are very introspective. And maybe when you were 12 years old, you sat around and went, search for identity. Who am I? What am I all about? What will I be? Am I this type of person or am I that type of person? Most of you didn't do that. Most of you just happened. Stuff just happened to you. You got off into the world and you experienced the world. But a big part of adolescence is social and emotional development, trying to figure out who you are and what you're all about. I'll talk more about this when we talk about Erickson. But what I want to talk about for the rest of this time is something called moral development. Okay? Emotional development, social development, moral development. Morality, how you make your ethical decisions that are there. A man by the name of Kohlberg, okay, it's Kohlberg, and I'll have a slide up later with his name on it. Kohlberg, Kohlberg. Kohlberg said our stages of moral development is based on our stages of cognitive development. So as you progress cognitively, you will progress in your moral decision making. Everybody understand that? Now, what Kohlberg did is that the way he did his research is that he told scenarios to children and adolescents, and then he put them in what he called was a moral dilemma. Okay? A moral dilemma. And then he wanted to see how they would answer the moral dilemma. The way they answered the moral dilemma then gave him some insight into what stage of moral development he was at. So, let me use one of Kohlberg's famous moral dilemmas, but I'm going to change it a little bit to make it more 2013-ish. Okay? You ready? So just listen to me. You don't have to write anything down, just listen to me. Let's make believe that you all have now been married for 60 years to the same person. You're in your 80s. Okay? You're in your 80s. By the way, it's been an incredible relationship. Just an incredible relationship. One of those relationships that movies are made, happy movies are made about. You loved each other. You've had a great emotional, social, sexual life with them. In fact, you're in your 80s, you're still having a great sexual life with each other. Okay? You've made money. You've had children. You have great grandchildren. Everything is wonderful and great. You get the picture? In fact, you're both retired. You have a lot of money to travel. You just came back from a trip to Spain. Okay? And you go get your annual physical. You're 84 years old, and you come back and you say to your spouse, Doc said I'm pretty good for another year, no issues or problems. And you look at your spouse and you go, well, what's going on? If you feel them, you know what's going on. They go, I didn't get the same result. My doctor said there's an issue. Well, what's the issue? I didn't tell you this, but I have a lump over here, and the doctor said they're going to do a biopsy of it. He's pretty sure it's cancer. Biopsy comes back, not only is it cancer, but it's a very quick spreading cancer, and they give you about 6 months to live. Oh, how shocking that is, right? How incredible shocking that is. Don't get stuck in the emotion of that, please, all right? So that just happens. So you're upset, you're angry, frustrated, going through all those stages that are there. You're watching the news, you're watching your spouse basically just disintegrate in front of you. And on the news it says, new cancer drug, okay, to come on the market in 3 weeks. Can cure, and you're going, can cure what? And boom, you hear it. can cure the type of cancer your spouse has. Wow. It's such an incredible drug. It's worked so well that when they were doing the comparison studies on it, they had a control group that didn't get the drug who had cancer, because they do that, and they gave the drug to people who did have it, and it worked so effectively, they stopped the study, gave it to the drug to the people they weren't giving it to, and it cured them as well. Wow, incredible. And you're going, it's a miracle. It's an absolute miracle. 3 weeks go by, the drug is now available at your local pharmacy. You go in, and the person says, oh, Dr. Link, yeah, I've been thinking about you. I know your wife has this type of cancer. This is incredible. I've seen this happen. You give this out, you take one pill a day for X number of days, and it just works. It's incredible. And you say, shut up. Give me the drug. I want to go home. Let's start the treatment. He says, but there's one problem. You say, well, what's the problem? It's expensive. Well, how expensive is it? It's $750,000 for the drug. And you say, I can't. Well, wait a minute. I'm on Medicare. Okay, $750,000, I'm on Medicare. Let Medicare pay for it. The government has indicated that there's only 20,000 people in the United States who have this. Multiply that by $750,000, that's really too expensive, so they decided not to pay for it. And you go, that's unfair. That's unethical. And he says, I can't give it to you. You give me the money. He says, but wait a minute. I worked all my life. I have secondary insurance. All I have to do with my prescription drug program is pay a copay of $30, and it's mine. He says, well, no, all of the insurance companies in the United States are too expensive. We're not going to pay for it. By the way, this does go on, in case you don't know that. Okay? That does happen. So now, here's your first dilemma. You go home. What do you tell your spouse? All right? Now, you don't have to tell me what you tell them, but I want to know, what would you do? What would you do? Yeah, so, all right, let me do what Kohlberg would do. So Kohlberg would say, so what you're saying is that you're in your 80s, life is too short, life is going to be very short. And if you took the drug, I don't know how long you're going to live anyway. This just happens. You're thinking about it, you're using logic and rationality to come up with it, and that's what you're going to decide. So let's just hold your hand and we'll go through it together. What else would you do? You take out a what? A loan? Well, let me tell you what happens when you're in your mid-80s. Most banks are going to go, well, how are you going to pay this? The actuary tables, I'm looking up right now, basically say life expectancy is only about 6 more years for you. You'll never pay it. And then who's going to pay it? No, you're not getting a loan. It's a good answer, though. What are the side effects? No side effects. It's that good. I'm going to make it difficult for you, okay? It's incredible. It's a miracle drug. What else would you people do? All right. What would you do with your partner? What the hell? Their time has come. Just let them die. 2, develop a fundraising campaign. 3, pray. 4, steal a drug or something else. What would you do? And let me just put in your answers. Just do it quickly. Put in your answers. Excuse me? You're going to lobby Congress. Yeah, well, that's actually a good answer. That's because it's really unfair to do that, which is kind of what we're in now, because what's going to be covered and what isn't going to be covered and stuff. That's there. So let's see what you people would do. 37% would pray. Well, good for you. 16% of you would steal the drug. I got a bunch of thieves, illegal people here, huh? Well, you know what? Let's make it difficult for you now, because this is what Kohlberg did. He said, their time has come, let them die. Okay, develop a fundraising campaign. Yeah, okay, so you do. So you raise $5 million, but there's 20,000 other people that split that, and you'll never get the money you need. Pray Okay, that matches your ethical beliefs and your religious beliefs. That's there. But you still have to go to your spouse and say, sorry, I'll pray for you. You're dead. Okay? Now, what Kohlberg would say, tell me what your reasoning is for praying. And the reasoning you give, based on how you would answer that, okay, would place you in different levels of moral development. All right, so and I don't want to get into that because I get into arguments now with people and I want to insult your religions, but the way you would answer that would put you in different stages of moral development. But then Kohlberg would want to make it even more difficult for you. Then he would say, well, you know what, it's going to come down to you can't raise the money, okay, and if you want to save your spouse, there's only one other question, and that is number 4, would you steal the drug? Second question for you. Would you steal the drug? No. All right, now you'd say yes. Why would you steal the drug? Now again, the answers you give places you in different stages of moral development. Right. There's nothing else you can do, and
you don't want your spouse to die.
You don't want your spouse to die, and what? And you love them. What? What's that? You're desperate, so you want to save them. But why are you so desperate? What's going on here? You're scared? What else is going on here? Think at higher levels. Is this right? All right, so now we're thinking at higher levels. Okay, it's not right. It's unethical that somebody should make a decision about it, doing this. And what about the drug company that's selling this for $750,000? By the way, this was a dilemma that occurred when the AIDS drugs first came out. Who gets it and who doesn't it? And the outrageous amount of money it was that was there. Is that fair? So I'm going to steal the drug. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to steal the drug, give it to my wife, then I'll call channel 4, 5, 8, and 11, 9 and 11, and turn myself in. Why? Because my wife's life is more important than some damn rules that people have and laws that make so that some people can profit and some people can't. That's a different way of looking at it, isn't it? All right, so there are many, many different answers that you may come up with this. Or, I'm not going to steal it because it is unethical and on and on. And, you know, time has come, I'm in my 80s. It's the reasoning you're giving. You get it? So this is Kohlberg's stages of moral development. The pre-conventional stage in blue is basically pre-operational thinking. It's an egocentric child thinking this way, and sometimes we have adults whose cognitive development is still stuck in pre-operational level, and so is their moral development. Punishment orientations, pleasure-seeking orientation. Both of these orientations talk about what's in it for me. So some of these people would say, yeah, I'd steal the drug because who else is going to take care of me? I need her to take care of me. Who else is going to take care of me? It's all about me, it's all about me, it's all about me. Or let it die. I'll marry somebody younger who can take care of me. Or I got an insurance policy on it. Let it die, get that money. Yeah, for me. She's old anyway. Do you hear how selfish that is with my thinking? How about this one? Man, you got a jacket on. I like that jacket. Boom! My jacket now. That doesn't happen? Then you catch those people? Why'd you kill them? I had a jacket I wanted. Oh, how high are their cognitive development? Where's their moral development? Pretty low. It's all about me, it's all about me, it's all about me. What I want is the most important thing. If it gives me pleasure, I'll do it. I won't steal a drug because if I steal a drug, I'll probably get caught, thrown in jail, and then that would hurt me. It's all about me, it's all about me, it's all about me. They don't even talk about their spouse the way you did and your other people did. You know, they're not talking about the pain that's there. They're just going, who cares about them? It's all about me. Right? You get that pre-conventional level? And by the way, there are so many theories in this chapter. When on a test, I won't specifically say, is that stage 1 or stage 2? But I will say something like, is that the pre-conventional level or the conventional level? We'll do it in groups, all right? So the second stage is conventional level. That's based on concrete operational thinking. Concrete, what you see, what you hear, it's right there. Facts. Good boy, good girl orientation or the authority orientation. I won't steal a drug because good boys don't do that, and what will other people think of me? I will steal a drug because my buddies think that would be really cool, and I can brag to them. Yeah, I ripped them off, didn't I? Right? It's about me, but it's also about the general population as well. Or the big one with this one is called the authority orientation. You don't steal a drug because that is illegal. And you don't do anything illegal. My country, right or wrong. No matter what my country does, it is right. No questions asked. You get that? That's an authority orientation. Very concrete. Not thinking about anything else. This is the way it is. Now, your answers, the majority of your answers, I think just about all of your answers, were really based on post-conventional. You gave it some thought, you gave it some reasoning, that's there. It's social contract orientation or morality of the individual principles. What's the ethics of this? And you know what? Sometimes there's a higher order of thinking. Your religious statements, I'll pray, I'll let it happen, it's there. If you said to me, though it's God's way, God is handling this, and that was your only reason, that's conventional. Okay? If you said to me, well, you know what? There's going to be an afterlife that's there, and I've lived a good life, and I think I'll be in God's hands because there's going to be a reward that's there. And there's more higher level thinking for that based on morality, based on, I'm 80 years old, maybe a lot of us who are older will die. Let's go ahead and raise money, but give it to people who are younger. Someone in their 30s who may have that money. Give them the money so they could be saved instead of me. Okay? I think that's what Jesus would want me to do. Something like that. Okay? Would be at a higher level that's there. Or, you know what? This isn't right. This is highly unethical, that our society is based on making money and we have to allow people to die just because somebody else gets a profit. You understand the thinking that goes on there? So we're at the 50th anniversary of Martin Luther King's speech, the bombing at the Birmingham church that's there. If those people who protested were all at a concrete, conventional level, what they would say, well, the police are right. Okay? They're just right. We can't do anything about this. But they weren't that way. They said the laws were what? Were unethical, were immoral, and what we have to do is maybe protest. I'm going to demonstrate, but you know what? Arrest me. Go ahead. I'm going to follow your rules and regulations because I'm really not a terrorist. I'm really, I'm a good citizen, but I think your rules are wrong. Go ahead and arrest me. A civil disobedience, which is on what? A post-conventional level. It's a higher level of thinking that's there. And how brave some of those people are who are able to do something like that in the face of death. Where are you? Just think about it. Hopefully you're all at that higher level. All right, here's for 1 point. In the example of the moral dilemma involving the spouse with the druggist, which of the following responses would demonstrate the authority orientation? Remember that one? Authority orientation was in the conventional part there, right? It was right in the middle there. People would think he was dishonest. The druggist may be wrong, but the law says stealing is wrong. His wife may be ill, but if he steals the drug, he may get caught, or he should steal the drug and admit to it. Now, this is an application question. Go back. In the example of the moral dilemma involving the spouse with the druggist, which of the following responses would demonstrate authority orientation? What's the authority orientation, and which one of these answers would lead you, if you were using the authority orientation, which one of these answers would you say? You can talk with the person next to you. You only have 2 minutes to do this because class is about ready to end. And then select your answer. I like some of the discussions I'm hearing, because as you discuss this, you're teaching the other person to learn, and you're doing this together. That's good. But I just ran out of time, so select your answer. All right. So 73% of you are correct. Right, the druggist may be wrong, but the law is the law is the law is the law, and you better follow it. That's that authority orientation that's there. All right, let me